Testing. Okay. Find the roots by completing the square. So once again, here we go. Completing the square. We have x squared minus 4x plus 40 equals 0. I had to get this in the ax squared plus bx plus c form. Now I look at it. Is my leading coefficient 1? Yes. So now I'm going to isolate my x's, which means I'm going to take this 40 and move it over to the other side. X squared minus 4x equals negative 40. Now I'm going to take half, do my little thinking bubble, take half negative 4, which is negative 2, and square it, which is 4. So now that's the completing the square part. I will add 4 to both sides. X squared minus 4x plus 4 equals negative 36. There, I've completed this. This is a perfect square. It is the square of x minus 2. Remember the cheating? We just take this number that we had right here and we put it right there. Now we solve. Take the square root of both sides. X minus 2 is left over here. And the square root of negative 36 is plus or minus 6i. We know it's going to be I because it said in a plus bi form. Move the 2 to the other side, and x equals 2 plus or minus 6i. All right, we have two functions here, f and g, and they want us to divide them. So 3x squared minus 27 over 18x plus 30. However, I know when I divide functions, I flip and multiply. So I will take g of x and I'll flip it. 3x squared minus 7x minus 20 all over x squared minus 7x plus 12. Yes, that's a typo. That should have been an x in there. All right, so now if I'm going to multiply, I have to factor. Greatest common factor here is 3. I'm left with x squared minus 9, and that can factor again. So this numerator factors into 3, x minus 3, x plus 3. This denominator, greatest common factor is 6. I'm left with 3x plus 5. Right here, it's a trinomial with no greatest common factor, so I can go right to two sets of parentheses. 3x times x gets me 3x squared. Two numbers that multiply to 20, well, 5 and 4. 5 here, 4 here. Let's see, build my bridge, I get 12. Build my tunnel, I get 5. Can a 12 and a 5 ever get me a negative 7? Yep, if the 12 were negative and this were positive. So this must be positive 5, and this must be minus 4. Get rid of this. And continue. On the bottom, it's trinomial factoring again. X, two numbers that multiply to 12. 4 and 3, do they add up to 7? Yep, 4 and 3 if they're both negative. Now it's cross off happy time. 3x plus 5, 3x plus 5, x minus 4, x minus 4, x minus 3, x minus 3. This 3 and this 6 cancel down to 2, so my final answer is a numerator of x plus 3 over denominator of 2. Write the equation of a circle. Boom, right there. I have to know a circle is, and we've been through this, x minus h squared plus y minus k squared equals r squared. It's got a center at negative 3, negative 6, and it passes through the point negative 4, 8. Well, I'm going to give myself a little visual over here. Here is my graph. Negative 3, negative 6 would be right here. That's my center. And it passes through the point negative 4, positive 8. Well, I can get my center over here. X minus a minus 3 squared plus y minus a minus 6 squared means it's x plus 3 squared plus y plus 6 squared. So now I'm going to create a triangle. I have here, and then I have this big height, and then I have this diagonal, which is always my radius. Alright, so now I just have to figure out my sides. Well, how far was it from here to here? Well, from a negative 3, which is an x, to a negative 4, which is an x, this must have been 1. How big was my height? Well, from negative 6 to a positive 8 is 14. So now I'll do Pythagorean's theorem. So 1 plus 196 equals r squared. So r squared is 197 equals 197. And that is the formula of my circle. Check here, 14 squared. Yes, it is 196. I had to make sure. The arc of a circle intercepts the central angle with 1.5 radians. What formula do we know has radians and arc and radius? Radius times radians equals arc length. So we're finding the radius. We know the radians are 1.5, and we know the arc length is 6. Simple math tells us r, the radius, is 4. Oh, I have a formula. I haven't even read the problem yet. I just see a formula. H of t is 540, 1.039 to the t. Okay. Number of houses in Pleasantville grow according to this function. H represents the number of houses. T represents the number of years since 1995. A developer wants to know the number of houses exceeds 1,000. So houses have to exceed 1,000. This is my houses. Exceeding 1,000 would mean I'd have 1,001 houses. And I'm trying to figure out t. Alright, so I'm going to divide by 540. And I'm not going to divide that out. I'm actually going to leave that. Whoops. I just lost it. There it is. I'm actually going to leave that. And this is what I have left. 1,001 over 540 equals 1.039 to the t. And here comes my flashcard. How do we solve stuff when the exponent is unknown? We have to create logs. So you can use logs or natural logarithms. So I'm just going to stick with the log of this side equals the log of this, but powers are no longer powerful in logarithms, they fall down in front. So now to solve this, to get the t alone, I'm now going to divide by the log of 1.039. So over here on my calculator, the log of 1,001 divided by 540 has to get divided by the log of 1.039. And I get t equals 16.13, but that's not what the question asked for. The question asked for during which year? Well, years since 1995. So I take 1995 and I add on 16.13. So in the year 2011, I'll have 1,001 houses. If the probability it will rain is 60%. So this tells us rain is 0.6. So no rain is 0.4. It will rain exactly 3 out of 7 days. Exactly. Oh, we like this one because exactly means I only have to do it once. 7C3. Rain is 0.6. And I want that to happen only 3 times. And I want it not to rain 4 times. Take out my calculator. 7 C3 times 0.4 to the 4 times 0.6 to the third gets me 0.193536, and we want to round our answer to the nearest tenth, so it's 0.19. Simplify this expression into a single trigonometric. All right, so here are all those formulas I had made you memorize and torture. Cosecant is 1 over sine. 1 minus cosine squared is sine squared. Here go those flashcards. When I multiply, a denominator of sine cancels out with one of the numerators sine, leaving me with my single trigonometric function of sine of x. Okay, solve for x. That means I want to get this x alone. So I have to get this -3 away from it. How do I undo a power of -3? I raise it to its reciprocal. Whoops. The reciprocal is -1/3. So I'll raise all this to the -1/3. These cancel out, leaving me with x. 1/3 is fancy for cube root. What is the cube root of 27? 3. What is the cube root of 64? 8. But the negative tells me to flip this. So my answer is 8/3. Oh, chart. Who cares what the problem says? Off we go to our calculator. Stat. Edit. Clear. Clear. Put everything into my chart. This side is 5, 0, 4, 2, 1, 7. This side is 132,000, 310,000, 204,000, 238,000, 275,000, and 60,800. All right, so now what do they want me to do with this? Write a linear equation. Okay, so that means I'm going to do a linear regression. Stat, calculate a linear regression on list 1 and list 2. And where do they want me to round to? Nearest thousandths, so that means 3 places after the decimal. It's an equation, so I must write y equals 34739.713 x, and that's a negative, plus 313309.091. Great. Now what do they want me to do? Use this equation, predict the cottage price. So cottage price is y. To the nearest dollar of something located 3 blocks from the beach, and blocks from the beach is x. All right, so I'm just putting 3 in for x. So y is -34739.713, and instead of an x, I'm putting in 3, plus 313309.091. Now the rest is calculator work. All right. Negative 34739.713 times 3 plus 313309.091 gets me that. And what do they want me to round it to? Nearest dollar. So 95 cents is going to make that go up to 90. So $209,090. So Y was $209,090. Ooh, we got another resultant here. First thing I do, here's one force, here's another force. Draw my dotted line down the middle. There's my resultant. Let's see what we got. Measure the angles between the resultant and the two applied forces are 65 and 42. Okay, so they tell me this is 65 and this is 42. And the magnitude of the resultant is 24. Find the magnitude of the larger force. Well, first of all, I got to create a triangle. So I have to come over here and I create my triangle. And there's my triangle. So if this is 42, we know this is 42 because these are parallel, and that makes my Z. Well, just for the crap of it, 180 minus 65 minus 42 will tell me how big that other angle is. So 180 minus 65 minus 42 tells me that third angle is 73. Okay. Now I'm going to get rid of all this other stuff because I don't want it. That's gone, and that's gone. Okay, there's my triangle. Now who's the larger force? Is it this side X or is it this side Y? Well, who's across from the bigger angle? Y is the larger force. So Y is to the sine of 65 as 24 is to the sine of 73. Okay, bring my calculator out, do my math. 24 sine 65 divided by sine of 23 tells me my larger force is 56 because it said do it to the nearest pound. Solve this equation algebraically. Okay, we see 1, 2, 3, 4. So we know this is a cubic equation, which means it's going to cross the x-axis 1, 2, 3 times. So we're charged with finding these three numbers. So this is a factor by grouping. X cubed minus 5x squared minus 4x plus 20. So I'm going to group these two numbers together, and I'm going to group these two together. So remember, we do greatest common factor. So my greatest common factor here is x squared. And my greatest common factor here is minus 4. We do greatest common factor again, and we see that our common factor is x minus 5. So we're going to pull out the x minus 5, and that leaves us with an x squared and a minus 4. We're going to factor this again because we realize x squared minus 4 can get factored to x minus 2, x plus 2. And our places where it crosses the x-axis are 5, 2, and negative 2. 3 places, 3 answers. Last problem. A vertical flagpole, 46 feet high, is placed on top of a building. From a point on the ground level with the base of the building, the angle of elevation to the top of the flagpole and the angle of elevation to the bottom of the flagpole are 40 and 32 respectively. Okay, so this is 32. This entire angle is 40, so we know this little angle in here is 8. We know this is a right angle, so I can find all my other angles in this triangle now. If this is 32, 90 plus 32 is 122. So this is going to be 58 degrees. This is going to be 122 because this has to add up to 180. And now this triangle up top here has to add up to 180, so that's 130, so this is 50. Alright, so now I don't even know what they asked me to find. Find the height of the building. So I want to find x here. Well, your first instinct is to do law of sines. X is to the sine of 32 as we need another side. And that's where the key is. The key is we take a time out here and we can figure out how big y is. Because looking at this little triangle right here, we can say y is to the sine of 50 as 46 is to the sine of 8. And my shortcut here is, remember, 2 triangles, 2 sets of law of sines. So let's figure out what y is over here. So that is the sine of 50 times 46 divided by the sine of 8. So y ends up being 253, and do not round, Elena. Now I can use this answer over here, because now I know that x is to the sine of 32 as y, which I just figured out to be 253.1957982, is to the sine of 90. Well, we know the sine of 90 is 1, so all I have to do is multiply this times the sine of 32, and I just figured out the building to be 134.17. And where do they want me to round? To the nearest foot. So that building is 134 feet. Okay, I want to rationalize this denominator. So that means I have to multiply by the conjugate. So I take 5, 3 minus radical 2, and the conjugate is 3 plus radical 2. I FOIL out the bottom. 9 plus 3 radical 2 minus 3 radical 2 minus 2. Up top, we have a single distribution. We have 15 plus 5 radical 2. We know the whole reason we multiply by a conjugate is to get the middle radicals to cancel out. So we have 15 plus 5 radical 2 over 9 minus 2, which is 7. Write an equation of a circle. Automatically, we should know the general formula for a circle. X minus h squared, which represents the x value of the center. Y minus k squared, which represents the y value of the center, equals r squared. Well, to find that part is easy, because here's my center. So I know it is x minus a negative 3 squared plus y minus 4 squared. I just put in negative 3 and 4. Clean this up. We get x plus 3 squared plus y minus 4 squared. Now we just have to figure out the radius. Well, radius means a distance. And here's my radius right here. A radius goes from a center to a point on the circle. So now I'm going to form a right triangle. I'll drop this line down. There's my right triangle. Well, how far is this x? Well, it went over negative 3, so this distance must be 3. And how far must this be? Well, I went up 4, so that distance must be 4, giving me a 3, 4, 5 triangle, and thus r squared would be 25. And there's the equation of that circle. Solve for x. One thing I like right away is I have common denominators of x minus 3. So there's quite a few ways I can do this. I'm going to choose to multiply everybody by the common denominator. That means this one's going to get multiplied by x minus 3, this term gets multiplied by x minus 3, and this term gets multiplied by x minus 3. Numerator and denominator cancel out, leaving me 4x. Numerator and denominator cancel out, leaving 12. Sorry, I had a sneeze. And then 2 times x minus 3 leaves me 2x minus 6. When I solve this, I get 2x equals 6, x equals 3. Now most kids would circle that and go, woohoo, that's my answer. But if we check, as we're supposed to do, all our answers, we notice that if we put 3 back into that denominator, we will get 0 in the denominator. So this problem, the answer is the null set. There were no answers to this problem. This is a rejected. Okay, find to the nearest minute the angle whose measure is 3.45 radians. So I'm given radians, and I have to turn it into degrees. And I know to take radians and turn them into degrees, I multiply by 180 over pi. So my radians of 3.45 times 180 over pi, this is going to entail my calculator. Well, get rid of all this stuff. There's my calculator. .45 times 180 divided by, and I'll use my pi key, gets me 197.67. But they want it to the nearest minute, so I'm going to go into angle, which is right here in my apps, and I'm going to choose number 4. I'm going to take my answer and turn it into degrees, minutes, seconds. So my final answer is I have 197 degrees and 40 minutes. For this one, the first thing I see sticking right out is a formula. So I'm going to take that, V equals P times E to the raised to the R times T. So I've got some numbers here, 1200, I've got a rate, and I've got a time of 10 years. Alright, so they should be easy to put in. A time of 10 years goes in T. My rate is 6.5%, but that means 6.5 per 100. So when I change that into a decimal, it's 0.065 because I have to move the decimal over twice. So my rate is 0.065. E is E, and P is the principal initially invested, which is 1200. And now to figure out V, I just put that all on the calculator. 1200 times, E is right here above the division sign, raised to the 0.065 times 10. So I would have in my account after 10 years $2,298, and then I have to round that to the nearest cent, which is 65 cents. Okay, we have a point, -3, 2. So I'm going to take a graph. I'm going to go over -3 and up 2. And there's my point. So I went over -3, I went up 2, and voila, I make a triangle because it's trigonometry. I do Pythagorean's theorem and figure out C is the square root of 13. Well, see, I did all that without even reading the problem. Well, what do they want me to do? They want me to find the cosecant of theta. Well, theta is always right there. Cosecant is sine flipped. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, so cosecant is hypotenuse over opposite. My hypotenuse is radical 13, and my opposite is 2. Find the first 4 terms of the recursive sequence defined below. Well, they told me my first term is -3. So here I have my first term, my second term, my third term, my fourth term. And they told me my first term is -3. Now this says a sub n, well, I'm looking for my second term now, so I'm going to put 2 in for n, is found by taking a sub 2 minus 1 and minusing 2. I don't know what a sub 2 is. A sub 1 minus 2. Well, I do know what a sub 1 is. It's -3. So my second term is found by taking -3 and minusing 2. So my second term is -5. All right. To find my third term, a 3 minus 1 minus 3, because n now is 3. My third term is found by taking my second term and minusing 3. My third term is found by taking my second term and minusing 3. So my third term is -8. My fourth term, now n is 4. My fourth term is found by taking my third term and minusing 4. My fourth term is found by taking my third term, which is -8, and minusing 4. So my fourth term is -12. The committee has 5 members to be selected randomly. Okay, this committee, does order matter? No. So it is a combination. We've got 9 teachers and 20 students. So I'm going to pull that information out here. 9 teachers, 20 students. Determine how many different combinations can be formed if 2 members must be teachers. Oh, well, I have 9 teachers and I'm choosing 2. 3 members must be students. So I have 20 students and I'm choosing 3. The magic word "and" here means to multiply. So 9C2, whoops, 9C2 is 36, and 20C, how many was picking? 3, so 1,140. And now I'm going to multiply those together. So I have 41,040 possible combinations. Solve by completing the square. Alright, so now we got to take our steps for completing the square. First thing about completing the square says that my leading coefficient has to be a 1. So it's a 2, so I'm going to divide everybody by 2. All right, what do I get when I divide by 2? X squared minus 6x plus 2 equals 0. Next thing I have to do is isolate my x's, which means this 2 has to come over to the other side. Now this is where I complete the square. Remember my little thought bubble over here? I take half of negative 6 and I square it to get 9. So I'm adding 9 onto both sides, and I've created a perfect square. X squared minus 6x plus 9 equals 7. See, this is the perfect square. The perfect square being, if I did x minus 3, squared it, this binomial equals this trinomial. And remember I told you to cheat by just taking whatever you took for half of 6? And that's the number that goes right there. Now I'm going to solve this for x, which means I have to take a square root. So x minus 3 equals plus or minus the square root of 7. Move this 3 over, and x equals 3 plus or minus radical 7. And there, I solved this. You would get the same answer if you did the quadratic formula. But they didn't want you to do the quadratic formula. They wanted you to use completing the square. So you had to do completing the square. Solve this equation algebraically. Well, I've got 4 things here. Sorry. So anytime I have 4 terms raised to the 3rd power, I know this is factor by grouping. So I'm going to group. And to group, I simply do this. I'm going to take the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms and group them. And then I do the greatest common factor to both parentheses. Okay, so the greatest common factor in this first parenthesis is 4x squared. And when I pull out a 4x squared, I'm left with 2x plus 1. In here, the greatest common factor is 9, negative, and I'm left with 2x plus 1. Hey, look what I have. I should have another common factor when I do this grouping, so I'm going to do GCF again. And my greatest common factor this time is 2x plus 1. See, this has a 2x plus 1, and this has a 2x plus 1, leaving me with 4x squared minus 9. This is still a difference of 2 perfect squares. So I have to go 2x minus 3, 2x plus 3, 2x plus 1. It still equals 0 because I'm solving it. Now I take each one of these factors, set it equal to 0. 2x plus 1 equals 0, so x equals negative a half. 2x minus 3 equals 0, so x equals 3 halves. 2x plus 3 equals 0, so x equals negative 3 halves. See, what I did was I found out where this graph crosses the x-axis. Since it's a cube, we know a cubic function looks like this. And it's going to cross the x-axis 1, 2, 3 times. And here are my 3 places that it crosses the x-axis. Ooh, a table. I don't even have to read. Calculator. I go right to Stat. Go to Edit. I clear out my old lists. And I'm just going to enter my new ones. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and 11. Okay, my next list is 2, 25, 81, 175. Move this over here. 310 and 497. 497. All right, so what do they want me to do? Write a power regression. Okay, so I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go into stat. I'm going to calculate. I go down to a power regression of list 1 and list 2. And where do they want to round my values to? 3 decimal places. All right, so y equals, make sure you write y equals because it says an equation, so it has to have an equal sign. 2.000 times x raised to the 2.298. Okay, use this equation to predict the bacteria's growth to the nearest integer after 15 minutes. Well, minutes is my x, so that means I'm going to put 15 in for x. So y equals 2.00 times x. Whoops, we're not going to use x, right? We're going to use 15. That's what they told me to put in for x. And then we're going to raise that to the 2.298. Now it's all calculator work. 2 times, oh, I messed up. And instead of deleting all this, you may have noticed right here, since I'm rushing, this is really 1. I rounded wrong. This is 1. I rounded wrong. Okay, so let's do this now. 2.001 times 15 to the 2.298. Y equals 1009, and we want to reduce it to the nearest integer. So that is my answer. Okay, last problem. Forces. Boom. As soon as I see forces, all I do is I draw 2 forces. Here's one. Here's the other. And we always put a resultant. One resultant. Sorry, one force is 25. The other force is 85. And acting on a body forming an angle of this whole angle is 55. All right, so we have to form a triangle. And once again, I'll say it every single time. We do not form the triangle by doing that. That is cutting off our resultant right here. We take our triangle and we extend our resultant and we create this top triangle. So, since this red line here and this force are parallel, we know this is also 85. We can get rid of this now. But we have a little bit of a problem. This is 55. This is going to be 125. Remember, these angles are supplementary because basically we were forming a parallelogram. And in a parallelogram, consecutive angles are supplementary. That's the trick to forces. Okay, so now they wanted me to find the magnitude of the resultant. So I wanted to find x here. And now we're back to trigonometry. Trigonometry says to find missing sides we use law of cosines or law of sines. And in this case, it's law of cosines. Remember, in the law of cosines, we find the angle and then the side across from it. And when we do the problem, they go across from each other in the problem. And then the other two angles, the other two sides fill in our missing parts. Now, all we have to do is the math. So let's pull our calculator out here. 25 squared plus 85 squared minus 2 times 25 times 85 times the cosine of 125 gets me 1,287.69985, but that's what x squared is, so I'm going to take the square root of that. So x must be 101.4, and where do they want me to round to? To the nearest hundredth, so that's going to be 4.3. Now, what else do they want me to find? Find the measure of the nearest degree of the angle formed between the resultant and the larger force. Well, here's my larger force. Here's my resultant. So they're asking me to find this angle right here, which we'll call y. This one I'll do law of sines with. 25 is to the sine of y as 101.43, the resultant, is to the sine of 125. Sine 125 divided by 101.43. That gives me the sine of my angle that I'm looking for. So I have to inverse sine that. So that angle is a whopping 12 degrees.